Be afraid. Be very, very afraid. Are you afraid yet? Kinda, yeah. Everything's terrifying me. Well, get terrified. Because why should we be terrified? Not only because there are a whole host of new conditions to legitimize lockdowns and terror, but because it turns out that Moderna, who didn't actually cover themselves in glory in the last pandemic, with many of their booster shots being ultimately and potentially the entire project being an utter the results are not entirely in when it comes to adverse events and excess deaths and efficacy among children and how many miscarriages were caused and how many women's menstrual cycles were sent into a tailspin for evermore and what the origin of this spike in turbo cancers might have been and why athletes are suddenly dropping down all over the show. But nevertheless, I don't feel terribly inspired when I hear the name Moderna these days, but they've got $176 million to develop a bird flu vaccine. So, I don't know. Let's get into it. Let's see if Moderna and bird flu together can create the next set of profitable circumstances under which we will all toil. Moderna is set to receive $176 million in federal funding to develop a human vaccine against bird flu following outbreaks of the virus in dairy cows across several states, the Department of Health and Human Services announced on Tuesday. The US has documented 3 cases of humans with bird flu in 2024. 3! Okay? 3. $176 million in federal funding, and there are 3 people that have got bird flu. So why don't we just give each of them $10 million and just say, you guys crack on and enjoy your bird flu. Try not to cough on anyone. All had regular contact with dairy cows. As of July, more than 130 herds across 12 states have seen infected cows. The HHS award to the American vaccine manufacturer will go toward developing an mRNA-based pandemic influenza vaccine. Now, I don't know if you were able to receive this lesson during the pandemic period, but one of the things that's seemed increasingly clear to me is that mRNA technology may have some unanticipated side effects, and we should still be very much in the clinical trial period when it comes to. For example, it seems that it causes, I don't know, myocarditis, pericarditis. These are now matters of public record as much as they tried to stifle it. I don't know that this is something we should be marching confidently forward with on the basis of 3 people having bird flu. 3 people that, in my mind, had too much contact with dairy cows, possibly the wrong kind of contact. Moderna's candidate for the vaccine draws from mRNA technology used successfully during the COVID-19 response. Was it successful, or was that success highly controversial? Was that success potentially somewhat diminished by subsequent events? Are there court cases right now built around the opposite of success, in fact, the failure of those medications, resulting in one of the first Food and Drug Administration authorized COVID-19 vaccines ultimately licensed by the FDA, HHS said. Vaccines from mRNA can complement traditional vaccine technologies. Let's just complement those traditional vaccines. How were they complemented? They weren't very complimentary about the potential efficacy of ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine, were they? Like or other complementary medications. He sort of stormed in to the therapeutic space, barging people aside, monopolizing, both figuratively and literally, that space, denying anyone the right to not only criticize it, but discuss it or even declare their own personal experience, while we live in a culture where everyone's personal experience is elevated to their own personal religion. People couldn't say, oh God, I had a weird time when I took that vaccine. That was sort of basically illegal, certainly censored, and any attempts to push back on that censorship were actually brought down by the Supreme Court pretty recently. This is a concern with H5N1 avian influenza, even if the current risk to human health remains low. If the risk to human health remains low, why are we spending $176 million on it? We've successfully taken lessons during the COVID-19 pandemic and used them to better prepare for future public health crises. No, they haven't done that. What they tried to do in that WHO treaty, which has thankfully been denied and backed by many people because of our increasing awareness, was to prevent conversations conversation. Censorship was one of the key tenets of that treaty. Of course, they wanted your taxes. Of course, they wanted the right to override democracy in your country and implement their own laws. But they also wanted censorship. The lessons they learned really is, oh no, it's really difficult to engineer a global event when you have an informed population. What we have to ensure actually is that people feel disparate, ill-informed, and in order to achieve that, you have to censor them to an unprecedented degree. Whilst we have access to information like at no time in history because of technological advances, we are more censored than at any time in history. We are indeed misinformed by precisely the people who claim that misinformation and disinformation are a problem. HHS Secretary Xavier Becerra said in a statement, as part of that, we continue to develop new vaccines and other tools to help address influenza and bolster our pandemic response capabilities. The funding made through Federal Rapid Response Partnership Vehicle allows Moderna to enhance vaccine response capability, an HHS news release said. This includes using large-scale commercial mRNA manufacturing and ongoing seasonal flu vaccine development. HHS secured a fair pricing agreement to ensure cost savings access to vaccines. Phew! They're going to make them reasonably priced, are they? Well, that's reassuring. Moderna will prepare materials and conduct clinical trials to collect safety and immune response data to support FDA, then repress that information if it's not favourable, and eventually potentially scale response with commercial production in a public health emergency. These are the kind of stories that immediately make me think that there will be subsequent events. I can't imagine that the events will be such an obvious repetition of the last event, even though when you hear that event 219, you think, oh my God, they are blatant. They don't care that people are suspicious of what's happening on a global level. I mean, I don't think the next crisis is going to be medical. I imagine it's going to be military. That's not because of some Nostradamus-like quality, but simply because there are so many wars that are getting worse, that are unpopular, that we are continuing to fund. The award also enables rapid development of mRNA vaccine targeted to various influenza virus subtypes or strains with pandemic potential. Development and manufacturing can pivot quickly if needed to address other emerging infectious diseases, HHS said. Now, this is in USA Today, which is not a particularly contentious or avant-garde publication. It's a kind of banal instrument of the establishment, and even in what they're writing, it's plain that no real lessons have been learned from the pandemic period, except it's possible to exploit the public enormously and garner huge funding if you can generate enough fear and even come up with another potential threat. Most of us at this point believe that it would have been far more sensible to, from the beginning of the pandemic, shield the vulnerable, cross-reference and calibrate the various likely problems that come from massive lockdowns, the impact on other health conditions, cancer and heart disease. And I'm not even talking about the introduction of vaccines. I'm talking about the social measures like lockdowns. The kind of conversation that needs to take place actually is about the decentralization of power, and in particular the massive, stark, aggressive regulation of the pharmaceutical industry, probably beginning with the breakup of the FDA and the instantiation of a new fit-for-purpose regulatory body that the public have access to and participation in. We need new transparency, new clarity, an end to the bureaucratic managerial class of corrupt bureaucrats, of which Anthony Fauci is but one example. We need an end to the globalist billionaire class, of which George Soros and Bill Gates are but two examples. And we need an end of the corrupt political class that govern us while pretending to serve and protect us, of which Joe Biden is but one example. But that's just what I think, baby. Let me know what you think in the chat.
Hey, this is exciting. We've got a great partner today. It's Rumble, but beyond Rumble, it's Rumble's latest venture. Let me ask you first, are you a Sleepy Joe type character with zero cognitive performance, struggling to muster focus and brain power for basic things like running the United States of America? You've got to stop drinking woke liberal coffee that hates you and your way of life and start your day by drinking Rumble's very own 1775 coffee. This is going to be the best tasting coffee you've ever had. Seriously good, ethically sourced, from a family farm in the high altitude mountains of Bolivia. Not in the Bolivian lowlands, run not by a family, but by a single man, still living with a pet. No! Instead of waking up and drinking your big corporation-owned woke ideology coffee that's probably making you sick from the pesticides it's sprayed with, try Rumble's 1775 revolutionary coffee. Support freedom of speech. Build a parallel economy that actually values you and loves you. My favourite? It's dark, of course. I've always found the lure of the dark irresistible. I'm sorry, how can I stay mad at you? But you're just going to have to wait over there for a little while. Level up your morning routine with the 1775 coffee. Sleep all night knowing your hard-earned dollary dues are going towards supporting freedom-loving creators like me on Rumble. Visit 1775coffee.com now, pick up your first bag, use the code BRAND to save 10% on your first order. Oh, come on. Why choose, you know? Okay, back to the content.
You need to, the majority of the family to stop being so fucking sexy and concentrate on the point.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you want to see more uncensored content where free speech can flourish, join our live stream. Click the link right here to watch the next video if you want to, or become a member of a growing movement. Download the Rumble app and you'll be informed every time we make a new piece of content. Stay free.